Let's check if a dial pad has been enabled for test user 2 as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and open a private window, and I'll go to office.com. Let's just try and put in my login credentials for that particular. So here we go, and we're just going to sign in. Right. Then open Teams. Teams has opened, and as you can see, that part has not been enabled for this particular user here. So what it means is that the licenses or the add-ons are still propagating. It may take time. Okay, so if you assign licenses to the user and you check there is no dial pad and all that, you just have to take your time, relax, and check later. Okay. So just as we check from the Teams app and notice that the user has been enabled for enterprise voice or has been enabled for voice, but then does not have a phone number, we can check that via the Teams admin center as well. So in doing that, you go expand the admin centers and open Microsoft Teams admin center from there. So here we are. The Teams admin center, simply put, is a web-based portal from where you can manage everything about Microsoft Teams. Talk about your teams, you can be able to manage your teams, your team settings, your users, your Teams devices, that is your displays, your panels, your meeting rooms, and all that. Here you go to your meeting settings, meeting policies, and all of them can be managed from here. Okay, so let's just go. How do you know if a user has been licensed for enterprise voice but then does not have a phone number, just as we noticed from the Teams app? So you go to users, and then you go to manage users, and here are the users. So you can just navigate through. So here, as you can see, now look at this. From here we are getting a report that the first user, which is the main admin, has audio conferencing, has a phone system, is having a domestic calling plan, but then something is missing. There is no phone number. Okay, so if somebody is complaining that he's been enterprise voice enabled, but then he is not able to make phone calls, this is some of the things you need to check. So in order to be sure, you can check this as well using PowerShell, but then these two alone is enough to confirm that indeed the user has been enterprise voice enabled, but then does not have a phone number. Okay, remember, you go to users, manage users, and you can just navigate through phone system, domestic calling plan, and blah blah blah. Right, so let's check. How do we check using PowerShell as well? So we're just going to go ahead and open our PowerShell. We're just going to go for this, and we'll run it as an administrator. Just going to move this. I'm using multiple screens, so I'll just drag this over. Right, so remember, before you can be able to run any Teams commandlet, you will need to first install and connect to Teams PowerShell model. I've already installed Teams PowerShell model on this very PC, so I'll just go ahead and connect. Okay, and in connecting, you run the following commandlet: $credential space equals space get dash credential, and that will ask you for your login credentials. So I'm just going to do that real quick. $credential space very early in the morning here, so that just skills are not coming. So we're just going to go ahead. So we'll just, okay, here we go. So we have been asked to enter our login credentials, right? So I'm just going to pause the video real quick and go and grab the user credentials. So we'll just quickly grab my login credentials. So I'll just go back to the admin center again. But then if you know this offered as well, there is no need going back to the admin center. So I will just copy this and then go back to PowerShell. Okay. paste this and then enter my password. Okay, so the next step is to connect, right? So you run the following command: let's connect Microsoft Teams space hyphen credential $sign credential. It should connect us to Teams PowerShell model, right? So here we go. Whenever you get this out, what it means is that you've been able to successfully connect. Okay, right? So this is my tenant ID, this is my admin account, and the service is hosted in the cloud. So here we are able to connect successfully to Teams PowerShell model. So how do we check if the user has been enterprise voice enabled? You check using the following command: get -cs online voice user identity blah 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 here and there, and I will explain to you how you can be able to tell from the PowerShell output that the user has been enterprise voice enabled, right? So get CS online. Let's just go ahead and run this. Get CS online voice user identity. So I'm just going to put in this same user ID and let's see what we're going to get. So when you're done, you just hit enter and that will do the magic for you. Okay, so here we go. We have our PowerShell output. So let's take a look at this, right? So here, the output from getCS online voice user identity main underscore admin blah 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 is given as this. Now look at this. The identity here does not need to be this particular user ID all the time. I am using this particular user ID because this is the users whose voice status I want to check. So if you are using a user, let's say user@user.com, that is what you're supposed to put in, right? So let's see a online voice user identity, blah 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 is given like this. Now, what do we mean by all of this? Now, it is telling us that the name of the user here is main admin. When you go back to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you will notice that indeed the name of the user is main admin. Okay. So as you can see, this is the name of the user here, right? Now take a look at this. The same SIP domain. What is a SIP domain? SIP domain are basically domains authorized to send and receive SIP traffic and also used when assigning SIP address. We'll take a look at all of this in a separate video, right? Now, it is telling us from here that the user has been enterprise voice enabled. What this simply means is that the user has the right licenses for voice. That is how come the value here is being set to true. If the user has not been enabled for voice, this value here will be false. And you can see from here, so what is the license status? The user has been licensed. So this is what you look for when you run the PowerShell getCS online voice user. You need to check if the user has the license. One, you need to check if the user has been enterprise voice enabled. And so if the user has not been enterprise voice enabled, you will not be able to assign a phone number. And that is how come over here you can see even though the user has been enterprise voice enabled, something weird is happening. It is telling us that the user does not have a phone number, just as we noticed when we went to the Teams Admin Center. The user does not have a phone number. Okay, and when you check from even the user's Teams app, you can see that the user does not have any phone number assigned yet. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and quickly run this for all the other users as well. I'll just pause this and resume the video. So we have the output for the various users. This is what we checked earlier, and this is the test user number 1. Right, so from here you can see that this user as well is enterprise voice enabled, and we have explained this earlier. The usage location, here we're talking about the region. This is US. The PSTN connectivity online simply means that the user is home online. The license state is also licensed and all that. Now the data center from here as well, you can see this is where the data is installed for this user. Same applies to this particular user as well. But then something weird is happening here. We did not assign the same licenses or add-ons to these users. Okay, each of these users here, if you remember, this particular user was assigned Microsoft 365 Business Premium and Microsoft 365 Business Voice. In the case of this very user, it was Business Standard and Microsoft Teams Phone Standard, as well as domestic calling plan. That is what we assigned. And this particular user was assigned Microsoft 365 E5 and then domestic calling plan, right? And this user was assigned only phone system license. Now you notice this and the other two are the same, so I'll just move to this one and explain this. Over here we are getting that the SIP domain, unlike for this user does not have a SIP domain. We do not know the data center. There is no phone number assigned. The license state is licensed. However, the PSTN connectivity is on premises and enterprise voice enabled is false. Now, remember when we were talking about the types of business voice, we indicated that we have two types of business voice. One that is with calling plan, and then one that does not come with a calling plan. And this is when you have business voice that is without calling plan. This is also known as direct routing. So you are bringing your existing telephony system to Microsoft by way of session border controller. So when that happens, you only buy the phone system license from Microsoft, and then you get your telephone number through a third party and all that. So because we only assign a phone system license, in this case Microsoft Teams Phone Standard, the system assumes that this user is hosted on-prem. This is why we are getting this particular value. And then the enterprise voice enabled status is also set to false. It is simply because this user does not have a calling plan. That is why we are getting this. And there is no phone number assigned to this user as well. And then in the case of the last user, get CS online voice user, blah blah blah. If you check, you notice that this user has only been assigned business premium. So it is not surprising that we are getting this particular value here, that the user has not been enabled for voice, so it's not a voice user. Right. Let's check the license combination for the other users as well. So we have this user, which is Microsoft 365 Business Premium, Microsoft 365 Business Voice, and then in the case of this user, we did not go for the business voice as a package. We went for the voice features separately, right? So in this case, Teams Phone Standard separately, and then the domestic calling plan. Here you can choose to go for international calling plan as well, depending on your calling need. Here we went for Microsoft 365 E5 and then a domestic calling plan, right? So this is what we explained earlier, that you have at least 3 combinations when it comes to the voice licenses that you can go for, right? As explained here.